paused it.
Oh, and then for the ATS abstract, if there's any chance that I could be like senior author on it, I would love that. So, because my grant's getting reviewed today and tomorrow. I'm guessing it'll be a resub just because getting it the first time around is tough. And it would be nice to have some, long progress with like either a first authorship or a senior authorship. But I know Stanford wanted the first authorship on this one.
Okay,
So,
that sounds good, Mister.
cool.
Thanks, Eamon.
Oh yeah. I mean, thanks for putting all this together. I'm excited to see what it looks like.
Yeah. So yeah, and feel free to give me any feedback or anything I need to change. I'm happy to do some edits. So I worked through all the Fontaine patients, and all the data and all the PowerPoint, all the PDFs that I ran are in the share file, but I just put it in the PDF to make it a little easier to see. Can you guys all see the screen? Okay. So this is the first one. I just did it in order from base of the patients. So this one was actually pretty, this one was okay. I guess the one question we had though was, I noticed that for the perfusion, you kind of have it kind of picks up the spine, which might be an issue. But then when you do when it kind of maps everything over it, it seems to not, it kind of doesn't worry about it. So I was just curious, does this matter? Do I need to worry about this at all? Because it's not in the ROI.
If I were to guess, there's probably some partial voluming and like beating in the image that's happening at the cardiac frequency just as a result of normal tissue movement. Okay. So it's probably picking that up. But then that's, I think, why the ROI going around the lung is valuable, so that it can exclude any of those sort of extraneous areas. And you'll see that also if you look in the image that actually catches like a slice of the heart, you'll see the arteries coming out of the heart light up at the same frequency, but then they don't get included in analysis.
Okay. I just want to make sure I needed to be worried about that or anything. Yeah, so this one was pretty straightforward. This is one of the corona with the O2. I just put the lung statistics if you wanted to see it.
Can we go back just so I can ask another question? Because I think my other question, just because I'm still trying to understand FVL. So this FVL in the left lower quadrant, when I'm trying to look at the data analysis, I'm trying to figure out do we include the FVL percentages, or do we just look at the VQ defects or non-defects? That's the thing I'm still trying to understand, the difference between those two lower panels.
I mean, I think the FVL is going to be purely a respiratory metric, right? That won't have anything to do with perfusion.
I have no idea.
No. So the FVL is the Roberta, the flow volume loop, okay, and they map the flow volume in regional in all the lung regions, and they create an average sort of map, and then compare different regions to that average. And so again, I think when you do pulmonary function, flow volume is a forced maneuver, right? Whereas here it is a normal breathing. There is no extra maneuver. And the flow volume, there are a couple of numbers they get out of it. One is on the flow volume curve, what's the sort of number on x-axis when inspiration starts and when inspiration ends, etc. So there are, I mean, the paper I sent has some of that detail, I think. But, and I don't think it's a geometry-based approach, meaning I don't think they're using how the flow volume looks like. Rather, it's a timed and volume-based approach. So for example, there is a time to peak statistic. So exactly what, I don't remember now exactly what goes into the number, the data for flow volume loop, I'm not sure, but it is supposed to be representing ventilation. And just like they are having a ventilation map, they're having devising a ventilation map using flow volume changes and how homogeneous those flow volume changes are. And I think from my reading, my instinct is the flow volume correlation coefficient is probably more important than the flow volume perfusion map. But again, these things are, I don't think, I mean, they've never been validated in children for sure. And even in COPDs, they just correlate with ventilation maps. And I think they give a little more functional meaning to ventilation defects or regional inhomogeneity.
And then, so I guess I don't, because I think if there's a ventilation map and then there's this FVL map, one is I'm trying to figure out, do we, and just a very general thing, like ventilation, I don't think is a huge problem with our Fontan patients, at least the ones that we've seen so far. But I don't know that the FVL needs to be reported in addition to the ventilation map, or maybe people still would like to report it just because it's an available metric and we're trying to understand it. But we can look at the data in a little bit to try to understand what should be reported. But I guess I don't really understand the FVL enough to know if I trust.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, first, does the technique have enough sort of granularity or resolution or whatever term you want to use that you can trust the flow volume loops coming out of the machine, number one. The second thing is, what does it actually mean? It's not a forced maneuver. What does it actually mean? And I think the best case scenario for the machine, for the metric, is that it tells us a functional concept. It describes a functional concept that ventilation defect may not, because ventilation defect is throughout the respiratory cycle or throughout the inspiratory cycle, if you will, right? This much is going in and this much is going in here, etc. Whereas flow volume loop sort of incorporates time into it also, and how fast is it going in, and how does it correlate with the flow acceleration, etc. So, I think from pathophysiological point of view, it's much more relevant for my BPD babies or COPD patients where they actually tried this.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Or asthma patients. Whereas it may not be relevant for Fontan. I don't know enough about Fontan. So we don't need to mention and confuse ourselves until we learn more about this, actually.
Yeah, and that's why I'm thinking I'll probably leave it out because even the ventilation maps aren't that different. And so, okay, so I just wanted to think about that.
Can I ask you what do you expect in the Fontan patient? If you didn't see any of these and you said, okay, if this thing pre-fold worked perfectly, this is what I will see.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest change would be in, or abnormality would be in perfusion. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think if a patient had both asthma plus Fontan physiology, I think we might see something that's, abnormal. So we do have some patients with PCD and Fontan physiology. There's not a lot of them, but those would be the patients where they have underlying lung disease that we would see both a difference in ventilation and perfusion. And whether those ventilation perfusion defects match or not, I would think they would match, but they could be completely just due to the patient's underlying lung disease, if they have lung disease. So if they have asthma or if they have PCD, I would think that it would look, everything would look abnormal.
So you should typically see perfusion defects alone. That's sort of the typical
That's what I would think, but I also, just because it's looking at ventilation, I don't think it will pick up the patients who have reduced vital capacity. So that's our biggest finding, is a lot of patients with Fontan physiology have a reduced vital capacity, but they don't have airway obstruction. And I don't think we're going to pick that up, at least in the metrics that we're looking at. If it could give us lung volume, but it can't because it's only doing, like one cut. That would be something. If it could tell us something like, maybe even lateral movements, or if we're doing a sagittal, or actually even the axial cuts, if we saw like a difference in anterior AP like motion, I think that would be another way to get to this question about like what causes reduced vital capacity. But I think we have the other images to be able to do that. And it might be, great at some point to take a look at that. I don't think we have the time to do it, but there are a couple of undergrads that are kind of motivated to get something done. It could be something added or kept separate from this particular group, but of data. So I think it'd be an interesting thing to look at, because vital capacity from a lung standpoint is the biggest abnormality in Fontan patients.
And the vital capacity is reduced, you said, and
Yes.
the only reason why vital capacity, or the couple of reasons why vital capacity would be reduced, is pulmonary hyperplasia or interstitial lung disease. Am I right? Or
So that's a big question that hasn't been answered, because we haven't been looking at lung function or volume testing over a patient's lifetime. So the biggest correlation between reduced vital capacity and, something related to a patient with congenital heart disease is the number of thoracotomies, or what's the other word for it? Some patients have had thoracotomy, some patients have had open surgeries. So the Fontan patients in general have more chest surgeries, but not all Fontan patients with the same number of, cardiac surgeries have reduced vital capacity. So people have tried to attribute it, and we see patients who have like tetralogy of Fallot. Anyone who has a more thoracotomies wind up having higher risk, but not all of them do have a reduced vital capacity. So it could be all the above. The only way I think we're going to be able to get at it is something like what we're doing now, is if we could image patients more systematically, we would be able to tell, did their vital capacity actually reduce after they had, their one surgery, we give them time to heal, we do it again. It would be interesting, because I think, there are patients who go on to needing heart, liver transplants, and being able to predict whether we can prevent some of that abnormal physiology by just understanding the natural course, I think is another big reason why I think we have a chance at some of these other grants that are focused on Fontan patients, because it will translate over to other patients with congenital heart disease.
Got it. I think we can talk more offline. I have a few thoughts about the pathophysiology and possibly how to get at it. But we can talk more after this.
Yeah, and just to bring up another thing, so Amen, what's her name? Vindra? Is it Vindra? Who's doing the fetal?
I don't. Do you mean John's new postdoc?
Vidya.
Oh, yes, Vidya.
So Vidya has been here for a long time. We put in like an R21 grant like a long time ago to look at fetal physiology, or fetal lung scans. And she's still doing that, but she focuses on the brain right now. But John Wood was thinking, because I was trying to figure out like what they were doing with their fetal low field stuff. And then I just realized, like, oh, when we were talking about it, Vidya actually has a ton of data from fetal patients who have congenital heart disease, because she's been scanning patients to look at their brain physiology. So we have technically a cohort of patients, which people have looked at this. It's not like looking at lung volumes is something new, but we may have a large enough cohort to be able to answer some of these questions as to, do patients with Fontan physiology, do some of them have a reduced, lung volume? So they have maybe pulmonary hypoplasia. This question about like, if you have abnormal cardiac development, do you always have abnormal pulmonary development? So I think there's a lot of interesting questions. Granted that fetal population, some of them may be old enough that we actually have some current cardiac MRIs, but I bet there's a lot of those patients that, because we're getting fetal MRIs for a lot of congenital heart disease, that we could still potentially even have another type of grant where we can look at patients who have fetal imaging and then have, X, Y, and Z surgeries coming up, like they're going to get their Glenn and Fontan in the next 2 to 5 years. It'd be really interesting. Oh, John Dietrich. I was just talking about cardiac stuff.
I know I got on about 2 minutes ago. Sorry, I had 2 trial research meetings at 9 a.m., but we're done. So thank you. Sorry about that, you guys.
Oh, no worries. Because, I don't know if you heard the part where I started to wonder if we should go and start to look at some of the data that Vidya has from the fetal scans and be
Yeah.
able to like scan some of those kids that have been born now to try to, get some longitudinal data, see if we can predict lung development in some of those patients.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you don't have to we don't have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to lung volumes because there's so many like huge data sets. So we can compare their lung volumes. Granted, I bet I actually don't know what Vidya's patient population is, but I know at one point they were also doing I think, was it the endo group is doing? It's,
I don't know.
I forget what they're looking at. Something hyperplasia.
They always look at fat. I know that. They look at fat stuff.
They got that prenatal diagnosis. It's something.
Oh, is it the CAH? Is it Mimi Kim and CAH?
Yes, Mimi. Congenital adrenal
Hyperplasia. Yeah. CAH. Did she get her grant funded?
You mean the one from a long time ago?
I don't know. She's been she and I were K awardees together, and then she's been going after an R1 for the same amount of time I have.
I know she's got. I think I was thinking about the K award, but I don't know. Maybe she has, but I don't know that for sure.
Either way, yes, she's studying congenital adrenal hyperplasia. She actually has a ton of cardiac MRIs, so there will be lung with that. So if that's something you're looking at, that's another group that you might have as a captive audience. We did do some fetal echoes in patients who had known CAH prenatally. It's pretty rare, but we've done it. So anyway, but to get back to your point about Vidya's stuff, I do think that that's pretty low hanging fruit that you should go after, because I think you could get a lot out of that. And
I know we did an R21 before. I know how those aren't being funded as well, but maybe it's worthwhile even doing that. But
just doing or go after and try. I don't know if you can get the preliminary data. If you can go through and just get the data, then maybe you can actually get an R1.
That's true, and do something prospective. So,
yeah.
Mr. Did you wind up talking to her name starts with an A, last name starts with an H. The undergrad that used to.
Who?
The person who's interested in cardiology. I emailed you about her. See if she could help with the cardiac MRI stuff.
Oh, you know what? Did she ever reach back out to me? I was away for so long. Like I was in Germany. I was in DC, then
let me email her, Mr.
Is it Andrea or something? Here, let me
I can't remember. I can't believe I can't remember her name. She was so great. She did some podcasts for us. She did a whole bunch of stuff. She's totally
a medical student.
She's totally great. We could get her to do stuff. And then Katie is also already on the grant itself. I mean, not the grant, but the IRB application. So maybe I'll have her do a few things. I think
Audrey, that's
it.
Audrey
her,
Her.
yeah, HER.
She's a USC undergrad, correct?
Yeah, she's like great, mister.
Okay, yeah, that was from October 4th. Let me see if she ever texted me. Or not texted, sorry, emailed me.
All right, so that'll be helpful. I mean, granted, we haven't even gotten through this first slide, but it's making
Yeah, she hasn't reached out to me yet.
Okay, I'll email you guys again because I think if she gets started on a few things, we can, once they get used to, and I don't know if this is possible, Mister, that you can show her how to do the cardiac MRI.
The analysis?
Yeah.
I can. It's going to take, she's going to have to come in, get approved. We have to put her on an IRB. Like she's going to have to go on the IRB from USC.
Yeah. I can handle that. And as long as you will be in charge of like giving her the cardiac experience, because she's just interested in cardiology, I can handle the paperwork stuff.
Yeah, no problem. I can. It's going to take, yeah, just if we can get the paperwork, can you keep me in the loop on the paperwork? I don't want to get like an email 3 or 4 months from now that says, hey, Audrey's approved to work with you. And then I'm like, not ready. So just keep me in the loop as to what the progress is.
Getting her on the IRB will be super easy for the USC side. So I think
and we'll have to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
And do you think that, and I don't know if this is going to be useful because perfusion is the biggest difference in this patient population. Do you think we would have any of the cardiac MRI data to add to the ATS abstract or?
Yes. When is that due?
November 1st.
Yeah, no, I need to get that done like ASAP. So actually I was going to try to work on some of that this afternoon.
Do you know which patients to look at?
I just need to I need to find where their DICOM images are, and I need to import their DICOM images to my workstation.
Eamon, are the cardiac MRI images on the SharePoint?
You mean, I mean, anything that was taken at disk is on is there. I uploaded everything.
Which SharePoint?
There's a folder called Lung MRI Share, I think it's called.
Is that from the Slack page?
No, I sent it out.
Good. I just wanted to kind of ask about Hazel just because I'm taking over for like we're doing a new consult fellow, and so I'm seeing.
I'm gonna meet you, Stanford. Oh, thanks. Because there's the font. Oh, I guess it's fine. We use the 2 asthma / well-controlled asthma patients as the controls here. We won't have any controls for the cardiac.
So wait, go back. Can you go back to what you were looking at? Who's that? Is that a Fontan?
Yes.
Interesting. Did you go through other slides besides this, or is this the first one you started with?
First one.
Because this perfusion looks a lot more uniform than the earlier Fontan patients that had those really segmental spots. Do you remember that?
It's very abnormal, though, I would say.
Well, what's normal? Can you show me normal?
Yeah, I mean, this looks a lot more like a normal
normal
person than the other images we've seen.
Yeah, there was the other ones that it was a left upper lobe that lit up and a right lower lobe that lit up.
I think everyone's going to be different. Well, it's probably because I also looked at it already.
Exactly. I agree. I bet you're right. Like everyone's going to be different. Is this another one?
This one's like a normal control.
Increase the IPAP to 24.
Like this is an asthma control patient.
Looks like whenever I'm looking at
asthma control.
The order
really controlled.
Just based on my sort of anecdotal,
there was like one time it was charted
having
as
looked
like
at other scans,
when maybe the order was switched, but then it went back
I feel
to
like even
22
in
over 8.
normal controls,
like
the perfusion ventilation maps that I had seen before were less uniform than this, and it may be because I was using a more anterior slice.
So,
you want to show the other one, mister?
Yeah, show me all, like, let's go through. So let me give you a little bit of background here and why I'm asking this. So we recently instituted over the last couple of years doing something called a heavy T2 weighted scan in our Fontans. because it gives you lymphatic imaging without giving any kind of contrast. And it shows you where the lymphatic engorgement probably is worst. And so, but what we realized was we were grading them all differently. Myself, John, Andrew, Jamie, we were going through. And so what we did was we actually spent some time with Neil Patel because he's most interested in the lymphatic stuff. He was getting not frustrated, but he's like, look, he's like, you guys are all giving me kind of slightly different things and we're not agreeing on any of them. And so it'd be nice to go through some of these things. And to start with is a true healthy population, even if it's just 2 or 3 patients or 2 or 3 healthy participants. And so what I was going to say is if we need some teenagers, I have 3 kids who can lie still in a 0.5 Tesla magnet and get pre-full. And 2 of them go to Loyola High School, which is literally 5 minutes, 10 minutes from USC, from DISC. Do we want to do that? I'm not going to necessarily be able to fund that, but does anybody have funding for Healthies for pre-full?
Not right now.
Okay.
I mean, do we need funding if we need someone to run the scan other than with Jennifer?
Yes. Well, Jennifer needs to be paid.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, can someone else run the scan instead of her? So, because I think Krishna has expressed that he's okay with us getting, comp scan time as long as we're not interfering with a paid scan.
Yeah.
What was it?
I was under the impression that we could run the disc magnet for no charge as long as we weren't using a tech that had to be paid and as long as we weren't preempting a study that was paying.
Yeah, but you're the only person who'd be able to do that.
Unless Sophia's willing to do it.
Oh, I think we were all under the assumption we cannot ask Sophia to come in to do free scans.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I'll be in town the 13th to the 17th of November, or the 13th to the 16th of November. If we can schedule it on one of those days.
13th through 16th?
Yeah.
What days would you really be able to scan those days?
Yeah, I come in midday. I land like lunchtime on the 13th and I leave on the 17th. So all of the 14th, 15th, or 16th is possible. I have some things I have to do at CHLA, but I don't think that they're going to actually take that long. So
I guess you can consent patients, is that right?
mm-hmm.
Because I know I'm in clinic on the 14th and the 15th. But that would be great to be able to scan some patients those days. Do you think that would mean even CF patients?
I mean, if they, I think we'd have to look at the calendar and make sure there's room in the schedule, but I don't see why not.
John Dietrich, are you available on Tuesday or Prabhu?
Which Tuesday?
November 14th.
November 14th. Yes, I should be around.
That would be nice to take advantage. That would be like almost like getting a grant. Because it'll cover like
an infusion of free scan time.
Yes. And then we could actually talk about the scans and like do a lot of, just like brainstorming. I just can't be there. I can be there maybe Wednesday afternoon and Thursday to help.
I can be there Thursday. I can't be there Wednesday. I can be there Tuesday. But I can't be there Wednesday. Monday and Wednesday are always my clinical days.
And do you want to see if there's time in the schedule?
Yeah, let me pull that up right now.
Do you have other in-person meetings that we need to schedule around?
I don't have anything booked yet. I know. So the one thing the reason I'm coming to town is because we need to move our server rack from John's little closet in SRT up to an actual room with air conditioning and like power requirements that will satisfy its needs. So that'll probably happen on Monday afternoon. And if everything goes as I expect it to go, I don't think it'll take me more than a couple hours. So I should have much of Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday available. And I think a lot of my I'll have after hours stuff. Like I think I have a team dinner and a few other things, but most of the actual workday should be open for other stuff.
Well, I guess that is the other question. Is it possible to do some more evening things? Because one of the reasons why we have trouble sometimes scheduling people is that we're trying to always schedule between, like the 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 for Sophia and
Mhm.
Jennifer. So if we could, there might be some people who may be interested in some later times just so they don't have to skip school.
Yeah, I could probably do one or two of those evenings.
Okay.
And it looks like the calendar is wide open right now for the magnet, and I'm not surprised because the ISMRM deadline is like the week before. So I think everyone's gonna just be
Getting all the data beforehand.
yeah.
Do you want to block those out? I bet if Krishna sees that this is a time that'd be unique, that you'd be able to be here to scan, that maybe he'd be okay like bouncing other people if they do try to scan.
Yeah, I'll shoot him a note and see how he wants me to put it on the calendar since I don't know, like I know how to schedule actual scanning blocks, but I don't know how he wants me to put like I'm in town and it would be great if this remained largely open. Sort of a notice.
That sounds great. And then John, so you could be there on Tuesday.
Yeah. Tuesday or Thursday.
That actually would be great. I've already forgotten how much it costs to like for scan time, but like even if it's like $500 per hour, mister, that's like thousands of dollars. We can schedule all those days.
Yeah.
Hmm. 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 Okay, let's look at more data, mister. Oh, and then just so you know, the other thing that even though this is post O2, I still have to go back and try to figure out which ones are the post O2, but right now I'm just looking at the pre.
So who's that?
So this is the same patient as before. This is a Chronos. This is just Chronos slice without O2.
So this is the more anterior slice, like I have previously analyzed.
So this is the pre-full perfusion and all that stuff on the previous. Can you put the other one next to this one? So the other one was on oxygen, you said?
Mm-hmm. Let me compare the actual slices. So this is the
It's just as an FYI, if you want to add them, you might want to just duplicate it so you don't have to. So you'll always have that other one.
I'm just trying to see how I can fit this all in the same slide.
No, that looks good, mister.
Okay. And then I'll try to see if I can do full screen. Is this better?
Looks good.
Yeah. So the one on the left is no oxygen and the one on the right is with oxygen.
That's correct.
And you said this is an asthma patient?
This one's a Fontan.
Oh. So if it's red on the VQ defects, that means that there's no perfusion.
But that's a mismatch driven by a perfusion defect.
Okay, so that's decreased perfusion to those red areas.
Yeah.
And the blue areas are decreased ventilation.
Yes.
Okay. So it's interesting. The perfusion, just to the eye, the perfusion improves on oxygen, so that's good. but the ventilation perfusion mismatch doesn't change all that much, although it does look like, for whatever reason, when you put them on oxygen, all of a sudden at the base of the two lungs, there was abnormal ventilation. Interesting. Okay. A little bit of a difference. The perfusion looks like it's gotten better, but so did the ventilation. And then there just was a slight ventilation mismatch in those blue areas. The blue areas, when you look at the balance is the same. Everything goes up probably, like the perfusion and the ventilation go up. And then there's just a slight imbalance now at the base of the lung. Interesting. What do you think, Roberta? You're the pulmonologist, you and Stanford.
Well, I think it's interesting to think, like I was also just trying to figure out, like, wonder if their respiratory rate decreases at all. I mean, I don't think it'd be appreciable.
Do you think so when we quantify the perfusion and the ventilation, can you is there a number that gets spit out when you do these regions of interest, Eamon? Like, can we?
Yeah, I think Stanford's got the statistics on another slide.
I have the data. Go ahead. Oh, I have the data also on an Excel file, but this is the data from the without oxygen, and then I have the data for the other oxygen. I haven't compared them side to side necessarily, on this PowerPoint though.
I think it'd be a lot easier to see if you put what happens with oxygen like next to, like something that we don't have to keep flopping back and forth between.
Yeah,
Like,
it's on an Excel file, Mister. We can show that in it after this. We're just looking at the images.
yeah. Okay, cool.
Or I can follow up. You want now or you want later?
No, later. Look, I
Okay.
agree with Roberta. Let's just look at the images.
Okay. All right. And then for this one, this is the same patient, different slice. This is before oxygen. This is so before, and then this is O2,
Interesting.
which is kind of the opposite.
Could it be because they're different slices? Because like the red on that VQ mismatch in the right, where you put them on oxygen, looks like it's the big airways or the big vessels or something.
I mean,
Right.
the cut through the spine looks about the same.
Okay. It makes it look like there's ventilation perfusion mismatch after you put them on oxygen.
Mm-hmm. Let's look at another one.
Yeah. Fascinating. This is so interesting.
I don't think I have any like O2s anymore after that one. I'll have to check. This is another patient. This is 686. This is also a Fontan patient. I'm not too sure why it looks the way it does. We don't believe that this kid only has one lung.
This is the patient we thought was maybe more anterior.
Yeah.
Because of the artifact, just to try to see some of the lung. So this one's just a hard one to interpret overall. But it's good to see just, the artifact makes a huge difference. And then I think you can see that the artifact is right in the center of the right upper lobe. So I think if we were to try to change the ROI, we'd probably have to come below the artifact or outside of that kind of clover shaped artifact.
Yeah. Do you want to pull the chest X-ray?
Yeah, mister.
So this is his chest X-ray. And so we weren't sure if like this is where we were getting the imaging. I'm not sure if this was causing play. There's a clip here I don't know if that was, it looks like it's here rather than up here, even though this is where kind of the artifact is.
Now those coils are different material than the clips. Is that right, John? Or do you think they would be the same?
No, they're different. The coils are probably nitinol, and the clips are probably some form of stainless steel, but neither the clips nor the coils now at this point. How old is this patient?
I'll have to take a look and
I
see.
got the spreadsheet up over here. Give me 1 second. This is 86, 86.
And there's a ton of stent in the Fontan, interestingly. So basically those most of those patients with the coils and those clips shouldn't cause anything other than just a small local artifact. If it's a patient who's old enough and they got cathed and coiled before 2012, I'd say, then there's a chance that those coils are going to be a gigantic mess for the lung and the chest.
Yeah, this patient's 20.2 years, John.
Okay, so they might have gotten those when we were still doing Gianturco stainless steel coils.
And the clips right now are still stainless steel?
What?
And clips right now are still stainless steel?
Well, yeah, but there's different types of stainless steel, and the stainless steel, like the type matters. So the little clips they use to clip the ductus, which is most of what you see there, like in that one spot that's right next to like just to the left of the spine, that sort of one bright clip, those are usually a certain type of stainless steel that doesn't cause a big massive artifact, so that's good. The sternal wires also don't usually cause a big artifact unless you're in a 3T scanner. And even then it's not completely ruining of the study. But the little coils that you see out in the lung fields and stuff, those are just going to be small local artifacts for the most part. And they shouldn't cause too much problem for most of the patients. But we would know from the MRI, because there was one patient I know that we did bring to the scanner that had pretty significant coil artifact. So most likely that person had massive Gianturco stainless steel. So it's a different type of stainless steel. They're all MR safe, and they'll say that they're MR safe, but whether or not they're MR nice is totally different. So
looking at that kind of cloverleaf artifact, could we just kind of estimate that whatever is above should be below too?
I wouldn't use any of that data.
Yeah.
Like not even try it.
Don't even try it.
I think for a patient like this, we'd probably want to try to get the gradient echo instead.
But even then, like, so it's fascinating that she had this artifact, and we'll be able to measure it compared to what it would be on the 1.5 Tesla, because I'm sure she's had a 1.5 Tesla MRI. So anyway, but yeah, those are what she has is probably a Gianturco stainless steel coil.
Well, that it would be interesting just to see the artifact differences. Amy, do you know if Krishna's, or maybe John, do you know, like, is there a paper in just comparing the differences between the two fields?
0.5 and the 1.5?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is actually. Yeah, Tien just sent me a paper. Actually, let me grab it and forward it to you guys.
Maybe these other patients can be included in that.
Yeah.
Or at least from maybe the artifact standpoint, since we have some data on that. Because there's this, is the more posterior slice, that's the same patient? That looks pretty good.
This is the same patient, but a more posterior slice. So you don't have as much of the art. You have a little bit of the artifact, but not as much.
And perfusion's very different there. So 686, coronal 1. I'll like exclude that.
Yeah, I almost wonder if the imaging plane was rotated a little bit so that the more anterior slice cut through like the right chest wall instead of the lung. And then the more posterior slice is actually maybe getting like anterior lungs. It looks like you get a little bit of the apex of the heart there too, which I haven't seen in some of the posterior coronal slices.
Hmm. I mean, at least from looking at the exterior portion of the patient's body, it doesn't look so off. It could also be just how the patient's heart is. It could be very
Mhm.
abnormally positioned, potentially. Just as an interesting fact, I don't know if you guys saw, but in the other one where you can't see the left lung, the computer decided to put the ROI for the left lung in the stomach where there was some air
Oh, yeah.
or
Huh.
in the intestine somewhere.
Interesting.
So it's trying to find something, and it did.
Yeah. I just forwarded you guys that email.
Okay, great.
Oh, cool.
That was the 686 Corona one. Want to keep on going, mister?
Yeah, this one is a lot worse,
Oh.
obviously.
Sorry, I just seen. Oh, sound is broken. Got it, mister. Do you want to just advance to the next one?
And this one did not have, that one did not have oxygen, right? 686.
Don't believe so.
Yeah.
All the rest of them shouldn't have any oxygen.
Yeah.
Though the oxygen is looking interesting now.
That is really bad perfusion, by the way. That is ugly.
Oh, that's the other thing that I still need to do is look at the baseline sats for these patients. See if we can see the difference.
Yeah.
Do you think you could advance to the next person, Stanford?
You just passed like a bunch of,
Yeah, those were all 686 different.
oh, those
slices.
were all the same. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Ooh.
Another one where when Stanford's been looking at them, he's trying to edit the ROIs because you can see like there's some artifact there, which is also confusing it. Very strange ROI.
Yeah, unfortunately. That
This one also looks like so there's a gain parameter in the scan that you can adjust, and it looks like it for we sort of empirically figured out that a value of 2 was good, but it looks like for this patient we may have needed to go higher, and we're just like losing signal in the lungs.
Yeah, because especially if it's when it's passive flow and it's not, it doesn't have the pulsatile waveform. But so that's interesting. Can the gain be adjusted after we do the scan, or does it have to be done at the time of the scan?
You might be able to post process it to brighten it up a little bit. I think technically it's an acquisition parameter. I would have to talk to Sophia about that and get her thoughts.
Okay. Because yeah, this might
we might be able to put in a QA check, like you run the first pre-full and drop an ROI in the lung, and if your SNR is below whatever, bump the parameter up and continue running.
And then for the abstract, do you think you can write up, just the description of how the pre-fill is done?
Yeah, like the acquisition and the processing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to go to the next one, mister? Do you have an edited ROI for that one? I can't remember.
I do. This is the edit.
It looks like it's still including the artifact area. I think to edit this one, you would want to go outside of the black area that's in the center where the spine is.
For some reason, I thought I did it. I'm not sure if it's
Not just.
further down.
Oh yeah, that looks edited. But then that doesn't.
Yeah.
One of them looked
I'll
edited.
have I'll have to run this one again, and try to.
Is there anybody else that would want to?
And I put the Excel file in the
Then you were around.
pre-full processed images folder.
Okay, cool.
About the Excel spreadsheets that you put in the SharePoint, can you tell me which ones were Fontans and which ones had cardiac?
It'll say Fontan in the volunteer, like in the diagnosis.
Yeah, if you go to the folder above the pre-full folder, there's a physio lung enrollment log and then study data. And if you open study data, it has their primary diagnosis with their volunteer ID.
And also for the pre-full process data with the data from these, it also has diagnosis listed there too.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I didn't scroll over. When it opened, it was because I had it open and I was looking, I'm like, oh, there's no diagnosis, but never mind. Sorry.
I still need to update it because I have to verify which ones have the O2 or not.
So then,
So that's
Okay.
why I haven't said without O2 yet. I gotta just double check all of them. Because sometimes we repeated them. Mister, do you want to go on to the next person? Because I think that one will have to probably edit the. The 706 is also Fontan patient. Like this would be an interesting one to know what the cardiac MRI says for right versus left. I mean, we don't have right versus left. Oh, that was the other thing to try to figure out if we could remove the ROI from one side so we could see right versus left data.
Yeah, the other thing is we may just be suffering from a lack of pulsatility in general and that's why these last couple of cases have been so, such bad perfusion.
yeah, and that's, there's a few different reasons for that. Okay. Yeah, I need to go through those MRIs this afternoon. Because you're right, like this could just be, it's the gain issue. And so we might need to consider, as much as I hate to say it, we'll have to forego a couple of these patients getting cardiac MRIs in the future and just focusing on pre-full and doing pre-full over and over again at different gains, because you might have to up the gain where, so for instance, this patient here in the top middle for the perfusion, and I know I'm a cardiologist, so my eye goes to the perfusion first. I'm sorry. But if we did two different gains, what would happen is that right lung, those two bright areas that are filling in with exactly. If we change the gain to try to draw out the perfusion in the left lung, those things are going to become like what looks like those white things down there. Exactly. Which isn't a horrible thing, but with Fontans, we might need to do like a sort of a 2-gain system where we do pre-full under one gain and then pre-full under another gain to see if we can draw out the non-pulsatile, because it's not that it's not phasic at all. So the thing is, and I know that we talked about this once with Krishna on the line, like, is it truly going off of pulsatility and is it expecting a pulse waveform and that's the only time it's going to gather up signal, or is it going to look at anything that's phasic in general? Because I'll tell you, like, I can show you what goes out into the lungs sometimes is phasic. It's not always, but it can be phasic.
Yeah, so what it's doing in this case is it registers all the images from the series and then takes a Fourier transform across them, and it's looking for frequency spikes in the Fourier domain.
Okay.
And it's, I presume, picking the lower frequency spike for the respiratory signal and the higher frequency spike for the cardiac signal. You weren't on yet, but there was one of Krishna's students is going to look at another technique called dynamic mode decomposition, which I haven't read about it yet, but Krishna says is showing promise as a sort of better version of pre-full. So it may, I need to read about it to know exactly what it's doing, but that may fix the problem by itself.
It may supplant it. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think the timeline is on that?
I'm going to give her a couple data sets today, and I'll see if she has an idea on timeline when I do that.
Oh, she's going to do it on the already gathered pre-full data?
Yeah, because it's a purely post-processing technique.
Oh, cool.
And just so I make sure I understand, because I thought the QDP or the perfusion cutoff is something that, because it is post-processing, that we don't have to worry about collecting the data again.
Yeah, we can reprocess these data sets with different techniques. We don't need to get the scans again. But if the acquisition gain is set too low, then we could run into SNR issues. And that we may or may not be able to fix in post-processing.
Okay.
So I think we'll have to see. And Sophia and I ran a few tests to hone in on the gains that we picked. But it may be that we need to adjust them for the Fontans, or it may be that we need to fiddle with the post-processing to get it to work.
Are we running or can we look at just the T1 map regardless of the whole looking for a frequency spike in the Fourier domain? Is it possible?
I don't know if, let me look at these patients real fast. This is 706. And I apologize.
Because
Run to another meeting, but
a T1 map should give us the same type of thing theoretically, but it's not going to be sensitive to whether or not it's pulsatile or not.
Yeah, there are T1 maps already post-processed on the scanner and in that DICOM folder on the SharePoint.
Okay.
Raymond, if you gotta go,
Yeah.
I can show some of the data for the perfusion, but let's just say you can tell who's Fontan, the default. It's not like a big surprise in terms of stats.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So I will I'll get Ezra the data and see about the DMD approach, and then I can chat with Stanford about what we need to do for the abstract. Cool. I will talk to you all later.
Bye, Eamon.
Bye.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, you too. See you in person soon.
Yep.
I think we still have another couple of patients.
Yeah.
Prabhu, John, do you still have time?
Yep. Hold on. Let me make sure I'm not missing some other.
Oh yeah, let me make sure too.
I'm post call, so I have all day.
Nice, Mr.
There
Go
is
all sleep.
There is an Axis meeting, but it's already started, but it's fine. It's the construction meeting for the new imaging center, which I can't wait to open.
Oh, that'll be nice. Okay, this is a Fontan patient too. This is our younger patient. He's the one that was wiggly. Was he wiggly? He was kind of wiggly.
Yeah. So this is another Fontan.
Yeah, this is the one who got the sedated MRI right after.
Did you want to see
John,
another?
John, do you expect a perfusion defect in every Fontan?
I don't know what to expect, man. No, I would expect that there's going to be very spotty perfusion. So this is fascinating. This is going to be so good for my grant. I can't tell you how, because like part of my thought process is that when you have passive blood flow, red blood cells aggregate, and so you're going to have pretty massive perfusion deficits to segmental deficits of perfusion, and that's what we're seeing. And I think I told you, Roberta, already that I'm not doing November 5th. I just can't get it. I could throw something together and put something in, and it's a second submission. I don't want to screw it up. Sorry. So I'm still going to put this stuff and the figures you guys sent, but we'll have more time to do bio sketches and all that. Because the nice thing is I'm already like most of the way there. It's just getting some slightly different data sets. So anyway,
I have
sorry.
3 questions for you, John, or 2 rather. When you say that obviously this is passive flow, and you are there is sort of what you implied was a collection of RBCs rather than a active pumping of the blood through those circulations. So am I right in understanding that it will be changing based on gravity? Prone versus supine will give you different defects?
I think so. So this is the thing. So red blood cells aggregate in all of us.
Yeah.
That's just a mechanical feature of our blood. And it's what it does is it draws the red cells away from the endothelial wall and creates what's called a cell pore layer, even in the venous system, especially in the venous system when you have slow flow and low shear rate flow. So just as a quick lesson, and I'm sorry if I'm being professorial on this one, but it's something that gets confused a lot. So shear rate is, if you look across the radius of a vessel, the shear rate is what's the difference in velocity across that vessel. So in an artery, you're going to have parabolic flow, right? And high velocity in the center line and lower velocities you go towards the wall because you get drag on the wall. So even in a pulsatile flow system, when you monodisperse red cells from the pumping action of the heart, you send them out into the arteries, whether it's the aorta or the pulmonary arteries, as monodispersed red cells. Those things still have a tendency to aggregate. They don't form rouleau, but they aggregate towards the center line. That's the property that we bank on to decrease the shear force on the endothelial surface and decrease drag. So there's a cell pore layer of plasma. It also helps when you talk about, as you start to get into deeper vessel branching into the microcirculation, you have something called plasma skimming, where you actually start to decrease plasma in certain vessels and increase plasma in other vessels, and it'll draw the red cells out with it. When you have a persistence of rouleau, which are in all of our systemic veins and even some of our pulmonary veins, because when you go through the microcirculation, come out on the venular side of the microcirculation after you've gone through the capillaries, the red cells start to collect and they form rouleau. And that's normal. Again, it helps smooth flow through the venous system. Okay. And so we see it in a lot of people in the Fontanes. When you see what's called smoke in the Fontaine, we think what we're seeing are red cell aggregates because there's such slow and low shear rate flow. The red cells aggregates are huge probably. But then those red cell aggregates persist into the pulmonary arteries in a Fontaine. So now what you've got is you're going to expend energy in the circulation of the lungs to break up those aggregates, because those aggregates are very low energy. And so if you just looked at breaking up one aggregate of rouleau, it's not that much. It's not that hard. Just the vortexing feature of the atrium and the ventricle will break those things up and send them out and monodisperse them. But what happens is as those aggregates go out into the microcirculation, you not only expend energy, viscous dissipation of that energy has to go somewhere. But you also, what happens is you probably are perfusing your red cell mass is probably going to regions of the lung in an abnormal manner. And so, yes, there's probably a component due to gravity. So when they are in the MRI, it would be fascinating to see if these perfusion maps are brighter on the posterior aspect compared to the anterior aspect. That's been a hypothesis of mine for a while now. And so the other part. Yeah.
I mean, this is like you could actually use that to sort of validate the technique also, right? If you actually lay the patient prone and supine, and then you see changes in maps.
No, don't think of it that way.
No?
Well, I wouldn't say validate. I don't know. That's a hypothesis.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's how it happens. And I am very much a data-driven person. If the data suggests that you have increased red cell mass into the gravity-dependent areas of the lung, then great, so be it. My hypothesis is proven right. But I would never say that that's going to be used to validate this technique. Just to be very clear, and make sure that we're speaking the same language. This technique, it's validated based on other gold standard, which is why Roberta is really interested in what the right-left perfusion is going to be. And so I need to get that to her so she can make some sense of this as the pulmonologist.
Well, it brings up another point, Stanford. Do you think that there'll be time to look at the axial images?
Yeah, I can work on processing the axial ones as well. I can work on that.
It would be nice if both of those give us the same data for the patients.
Sure. Yeah, I can work on it and then compare them and try to line up the data in the spreadsheet and see what the images look like and put them together.
Because we're still trying to figure out, there's like one question, can B-star be converted into a pre-fold type of analysis so that we have like a 3D evaluation of ventilation and perfusion? And if not, if we're doing the pre-fold like Siemens has set up right now, should we continue to do both the coronal and the axial, or can we just choose one set? But I do, even though we like the look of the coronal, I guess we do miss that kind of, dependent aspect of perfusion by not doing an axial image. So it'll be interesting to see how they differ. And if we can see that perfusion difference in the axial images, we should be able to see it. And that would be interesting because we should see that also in our normal controls versus like what we see right now. It looks pretty uniform in terms of perfusion. This may seem kind of silly. I probably should know this, but it made me start to think about, like if you look at the left upper lobe, there's, a part of that left upper lobe that has a lot of, anterior lung and posterior lung. And I was trying to figure out, like, does it matter? I actually was starting to have like a brain fart as to figuring out like how much perfusion should be in the left upper versus left lower. We may just need to look at the images. I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't remember. I think it'll be interesting for the BPD patients that have, Prabhu, how many patients do you think right now are getting PDA clips that are born prematurely? Do a lot of them get PDA clips?
Well, typically we close about 15 to 20 PDAs a year at our institution.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, but we may have more with because Berman is here. I forget his first name. He's doing the device closure before we were doing surgical closure. So device closure is supposedly less risky and obviously doesn't involve surgery. So we expect more patients to be referred to us.
John Dietrich, do you know anything about the device for the PDA closure? How different that will be? It should be pretty like.
That shouldn't cause a problem at all.
Yeah, it doesn't, even regular MRI doesn't cause a problem.
Okay.
Yep. And we'll even scan, we've scanned patients with those types of devices, nitinol devices and other types of vascular plugs and stuff within days to weeks of getting them placed. And we've never lost one. So.
But my PDA babies are too small to go to MRI unless something changes.
No way, dude. Put them in the knee coil.
What is that?
Put them in the brain coil. You can put them in the knee coil or in the brain coil.
Oh, no, not that. In that, the temperature control and all that.
Oh.
Yeah, from that point of view.
Yeah.
They're not too big they'll need constant heat.
Oh, yeah.
John, when you're talking about do we have coils like that for the new scanner for the really little babies?
What do you mean?
Like I actually don't have any idea of what the new low field scanner is going to have available.
So we'll have the small coils for the babies on the 1.5. For the 0.55 Tesla, I've asked John numerous times for certain things and to make sure that we're getting certain things, because anyway, I think that he has an idea, but we're not sure.
Well,
The
I will
0.5, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I will be a big customer of yours. Just
Yeah.
so you know.
We want customers. We want them. Please start referring when that place is going to open. I will personally invite you, give you a slice of cake and some coffee. You and Roberta are going to be like our best friends for that 0.55 Tesla scanner. Trust me.
Totally. So, I mean, I told this to John also, meaning John Wood. I'm hoping to do all my BPDs, which is about 80 to 100 a year. And if possible, do them longitudinally, like every 2 to 4 weeks. And that will depend on how much time we get and grants and all that, of course.
Yeah.
But that's certainly, that's sort of the least volume we can think of. And we can make it standard of care if a radiologist is able to read them.
Yeah.
Or if we automate this process, of course.
Yeah.
In years ago, for the regular MRIs, they created this isolate. They call it the bullet.
Yeah.
And which is made entirely of copper and plastic that can go into the MRI machine with the baby. Is that something you would be interested in investing in, or?
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, if you have things, and Roberta, this goes for you too. If you have things that you think you want to have us make sure we get in place at the scanner, even gas lines and stuff like that, you need to let us know. Okay.
Goggles.
Huh?
Goggles.
Oh yeah, that's for sure on the list for videos, for movies.
Gas line, you mean you will have oxygen and right?
Well, we'll have it we're going to have a really big anesthesia prep area, because the anesthesiologist specifically asked to make sure we could house an ECMO circuit if we needed one.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have a big pre area, and it's going to have gas. I know that putting gas lines near the MRI scanner can be problematic for certain things, but if we can get them close enough to where we can pipe in whatever gas we want, so then Roberta doesn't have to bring extra tanks and stuff like that. It's the type of thing that meeting that I'm missing right now is actually discussions on that side of things. So
have you go to the meeting?
What?
Should we have you go to the meeting?
Well, I mean, it's every week. It's
every week.
Yeah. We're yeah. So anyway, we'll just ask if you need something. So if you think that there's if you can find those things for me, send them to me. And because I'm putting together a list of stuff that we would want to do for ICMR.
What is ICMR again?
Interventional cardiac MRI.
Got it. I'm sorry. No, I think if you can replicate what's there in MR5, then all the things that we do clinically in MR5, which is pretty much everything, we can get to the low field. In addition, this bullet, I will investigate that, because we had that in my fellowship in Cleveland Clinic, and it was amazing. I mean, it will keep the babies warm, and they will be nice and snug. They won't move. The machine often won't work with it, even though they will claim it's great. But in low field, that should be even a less problem.
Yep. All right, research it and send it to me.
Okay.
Because you guys didn't hear this yet, probably. We just found out a couple weeks ago, and it was just announced at our division meeting. The state of California had put up these funds for, I think they realized that they are paying so horribly in Medicaid that the children's hospitals are suffering from every standpoint, construction staff, everything from top to bottom. Children's hospitals are suffering. And I think they're finally starting to understand that. They put up these huge grants for projects. Our imaging center is going to be pretty much fully funded by the state of California. So
Wow.
all of the money that we were trying to get and that we had raised through philanthropy and stuff is now going to be back in our kitty. So,
Oh, wow.
So we are going to, we are going to be trying to make sure that we get everything we need so that these scanners are ready as soon as possible to be scanning all the different patient types. And so that's going to include your patients and Roberta's patients. And so, yeah, so start to think of the things you want.
Yeah, totally.
I can't guarantee we're going to get it, but like just start.
I love asking.
Yeah. So just and go through me on this one, because I have to put together stuff for the ICMR suite anyway.
Yeah.
Just send me your stuff and I'll make sure that the list gets discussed.
Yeah, no, but to be clear, that what's there in MR5 would be there automatically, right? That I can assume.
Well, no, don't assume anything. Tell
No,
me what
okay.
tell me the features of MR5 that are particularly important to you.
Okay, I'll let you know. And when do you think this will be ready?
The imaging center?
Yeah.
I think we're supposed to be patient ready by either December 2024 or January 2025.
Okay.
And that keeps them moving farther and farther out.
No, they actually, so for a while we thought it was going to be spring 2025. They've moved it back up again. They're doing massive construction now. And because the state's funding it, they've redoubled all their efforts on getting this thing built. It moved back into there's a possibility we'll be ready in 2024. Somebody said November 2024 the other day. I don't quite believe them yet, but because we were pushing into March and April of 2025 initially. Now we're back up into November 2024. So we're going in the right direction.
Got it. And this is located in the old cafeteria, right?
Yep. Have you been here since we were in the old hospital? I can't remember. When did you come to Children's?
And I actually joined the year after 2014, the year after they came to the new hospital.
Okay.
But we used to have all our NRP and PALs in that bottom zone of the old hospital.
Oh yeah. Now Roberta and I remember that space very well. We've been here far too long, she and I.
Not too long.
Not too long, but we've been here a long time. Thanks, Roberta. Thanks for the correction. I love working with you, Roberta. It's awesome.
Should we look at the next ones?
Yeah.
But and Prabhu, this does make me think about the idea of needing controls for the infants.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that while the CHLA machine is getting ready, I will try to see if we can get normal control babies, newborns, to Krishna's scanner, and use Krishna's scanner primarily for normal babies who can schedule and come whenever and all that, and they won't get in the way of hospital or inpatient population at the CHLA scanner. Does that make sense to you, or?
No, it totally makes sense. And I almost feel like, this has always been the tricky thing, is like, say for Stanford's study and looking at early lung disease in CF patients. I mean, that's going to be the big question, is like, because I think in the end, the biggest confounder is always going to be viral illnesses. And someone will have had some kind of viral illness or something along the way. And to try to figure out how to get these normal controls who are actually normal, like that could be really tricky. But I think, I mean, some of these CF patients should be normal in a sense. There's also CRMS patients. That's another option where we think a lot of those patients won't have CF. I'm just trying to think of other patient populations that might be easily like we have access to.
It
And the other,
depends on,
oh, go
no, I
ahead.
guess it depends on the age group also.
Yeah.
What age group you have in mind?
Well, I mean, I guess that's always the question too, is like, do we have access to babies who have normal lungs, but who have come through the NICU,
Yeah, we have.
you know?
I can, a lot of our, we have a lot of babies who could have potentially normal. I mean, they may be intubated for some time, but
Mm. But even like patients who aren't, I mean, I guess maybe they're intubated for, I wouldn't call them elective procedures, but you know, I don't know if spina bifida might be another patient population. I'm just trying to think of someone who might have a child who has some invested interest in maybe like, you know, getting information about their child where their lungs at least are normal.
yeah, I think.
From a cardiac standpoint, I don't know if there's other patients that get cardiac MRIs that are normal. Do you have any?
That's, I just had the meeting the meeting I had with our coordinators right before I got on this call was about, we have 2 trials that I'm the site PI for that are getting started. One of them, we have to use healthy controls. And it turns out it's been actually more difficult to find to find patients who have what we would consider normal hearts.
What age range are you looking for?
Any age range. I want, like, we need anywhere down to, actually not any age range. They have to be able to do the scan awake. So that's like, I think we're down to 7 or 8 years old and all the way up to 25. But the thing is what my point was is very few people get MRIs that are truly healthy.
Exactly.
It is very hard. Andrew Chang tried to find quote unquote healthy subjects, and basically it was like, we're like, okay, who should we look for? Well, the people we should look for are the people who get sent here for rule out cardiomyopathy or rule out coronary artery problems. But it's incredibly rare that they get an MRI. So it was like we had like maybe 15 or 20 patients. That was it. So anyway, it's not always that easy, unfortunately. The thing we could do is like just try to get truly healthy people, like staff who are having babies.
I kept on asking Eamon to see if we can scan his baby, but he was like, no, she won't sit still. I was like, come on, that's
Dude, let's feed her and bundle her, man. Like, we can totally do it.
He's like, no, it's not gonna work. I'm like, come on, if there's anyone invested in getting
Yeah, dude.
Oh.
If I'd put my kids so many times in research's crosshairs, it's not even funny, dude. Like, we've gotten blood draws on my kids. And my son Caleb used to be like absolutely deathly afraid of needles. We could never do blood on Caleb. Now we can, he's older. But like, he would literally, we'd have to physically restrain him to get blood draws when he needed blood draws. So sad. My poor son, he's traumatized.
But like, even for this patient, like this data set, it helps so much just having normal controls.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. That was my first question is always, show me normal.
This is normal.
Yeah, I want to see normal. And this looks normal.
But there's still some like
Yeah.
that's a little bit off.
Yeah. That little spot. I mean, it's never really perfect.
We call that, this is a well-controlled asthma patient.
So that may actually be a real defect.
We have post-albuterol. I actually don't know if we have the post-albuterol here. Oh.
Yeah, so when Eamon comes, if we do get scanner time and Eamon's here physically, let's try to scan my 2 boys, because I can just go pick them up at Loyola after school and they can come to SC. Because Loyola is like literally right there.
So which is which?
The one on the right's post-albuterol, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you can see that. That's amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I mean, I guess the question will be is for normal controls. I wonder if we should do just the post-albuterol. Pre-albuterol, post-albuterol. I mean, they look so different anyways, it doesn't really matter. I mean, when you look at the data, it's like, you know, completely different.
Yeah.
And I just used the pre. I think. So
And
another,
this one's
oh, go ahead.
another well-controlled patient with asthma. This is pre-albuterol. Maybe a little bit of ventilation defect here,
Yeah.
maybe here. Let me see if I
Stanford,
can.
you're alive. We can hear you again.
Okay, good. I've been trying to troubleshoot it. Let's see if I can find you a post-albuterol. This one didn't have as much of a change.
Interesting. Is there a concept in the asthma world of having fixed bronchial disease?
Yeah, and there's like two ways that people look at it. So when people have done thermoplasty, like bronchial thermoplasty, if there is one area of the lung that seems to have bronchospasm, you could actually reduce symptoms by doing thermoplasty. So the other thing is all of the like European data from Germany that looked at the inhale like xenon or hyperpolarized gas. They can show both shifting, you know, ventilation defects and then some patients who have consistent areas.
This is another post-albuterol for that previous patient. This one looks a lot better in terms of the ventilation defect. So I guess I'll have to differentiate what the difference between this albuterol is versus this albuterol.
Oh, it's just like, what did it say? Coronal 2 versus,
Coronal 1.
yeah, so it's just different planes.
Same patient?
Same patient. So maybe this one's more posterior, so you don't have as much ventilation defect. Because when you look at the post-albuterol, there's not that much of a change. But if you go for the a little more interior, which is the one we saw here, you still have the ventilation defects.
Fascinating.
We can also predict like what lung field that represents, but I think that's more than we need to like talk about, to be honest, at least in this one. If we had more asthma patients, that would be interesting.
I like talking about this, Roberta. This is fantastic.
You know, isn't it great? I mean, that's why it's going to be interesting to have a set of asthma patients.
Yeah.
Because
So
this is
cool.
doable. You don't have to have the hyperpolarized. I mean, granted, you have to have a low field scanner. So
Yeah.
what's harder, getting a low field scanner or getting hyperpolarized gas? Hyperpolarized gas is like,
Hey, I have to take this call real quick. Hold on. I'm gonna mute my.
so probably I think the thing we got to think about is for the BPD patients, like, so I think Stanford, if you could look at the axial images, I think that will also be kind of, will give us extra insight. I don't know what we should look
There
at.
is an axial for pre-foam?
Mhm.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, because it hasn't been analyzed yet.
Oh, okay. How many cuts are there per patient?
I think there's also 2 cuts there too. So we have
Axial
2
will be,
coronal, 2 axial. What are you thinking about, Mr.? You're very deep in thinking mode.
No, I'm thinking, I mean, it is, if you have coronal, that makes sense if you want to get a map of the whole lung. Axial will be so much dependent on the region that you select, if you're selecting only two. And I'm thinking what those regions should be as a standard, or should the coronal be selected based on the defects you find in the axial should be selected if you find defects in the coronal, but that would be like too much because you
I
wouldn't
think
have,
that'd be, yeah, too much micro. I think especially when you're relying on a technician and
and they don't have time, right? They haven't
yeah, you won't have the
post-processed it.
pre-fold data at that time.
I think if you had to standardize, I would say the level of carina and just above the diaphragm. Those are probably easier to standardize,
Yeah, I think
and
we
they
could
sort
have
of give you the
yeah, I think we did like halfway between the carina and the diaphragm, just because the diaphragm's always moving. So it's always kind of a little bit tricky.
yeah,
But
and
if you go
the top.
yeah, if you go too low, you don't see a lot of the lung like lateral to the heart, but
Yeah.
I can't remember to be honest. I mean, the thing that we wanted to do though was capture some of the upper lung, so I can't remember which ones we chose. We're gonna have to
No,
look.
I think if you chose just above the carina,
Mhm.
okay, that's your upper, and then you would think that that's where normally the ventilation would be the best, and you will have the just above the diaphragm,
Mm.
right, or midway between the diaphragm and the carina as you choose, and that should show again the contrast between the two. In my BPD babies, you will see a big difference between those two regions. I'm certain. I see that in my MRI studies now with the 3T youth sequences. I don't see functional defects, obviously. I just see anatomically that every baby has collapsed regions posteriorly,
Yes.
which become worse closer to diaphragm than above.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it will. So I would be very interested in seeing the axial. I didn't realize you were doing axial, but then when we were there, they were talking about 3D reconstructions.
Well, so that was with the B star. So yesterday I spoke to Serena and Christian. Christian was on for a little bit. But Serena was looking at 3 patients where B star was done. One was in a 13-year-old, one was a 6-year-old, and the other patient was, I think, 8 years old. And the B star in all 3 of them did not look good. And I don't know if it was because of their age or what exactly was the problem, but
They were normal?
no, one has tracheomalacia, one has tracheomalacia and esophageal problems, and then the other one has like a single lung, says post like resection due to a carcinoma. But I think they seem to be cooperating really well, but I think it will still be hard to do pre-fold based on the B star reconstruction. At least in those 3 patients, I'm surprised it didn't look better. But it didn't look good at all.
And we think it's because of movement artifacts?
We can only think that it was movement. The other thing is that if someone's asleep, they have a very regular pattern. And one of the problems is that B star is collected over all the respiratory cycles. And so that will be something that NAM is trying to do, is like try to extract inspiratory and inspiratory and expiratory to try to get less movement that is being like reconstructed, because it gives a little bit of a blur, if you're trying to like look at the image in terms of how like the resolution. So it definitely looked fuzzy. It looked just like 1.5 in the like maybe not as bad as what you see when you're doing the or you're doing 3T for the babies, where it looks pretty fuzzy. It was looking that fuzzy.
Wow. That's
Versus
surprising.
the patient who fell asleep.
Yeah.
those patients, we seem to get really good images.
Yeah, they need to gate it for sure.
Yeah.
And, and if you read Cincinnati Group's lung imaging papers, which are based on 1.5T, they are always analyzing it after gating.
Mhm.
They
And
are not mixing the two. They are not averaging. So the huge sequences that I am using in 3T, they are averaging. And I asked
Oh,
Eamon
are
if she can. Yeah,
they would have been gated, kind of like the PD that we do.
no, they are not gated.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because they just have to gate on the diaphragm.
No, they are gated. They are not gated. They pick up there is navigator beam on the
Oh,
diaphragm.
they are
So,
doing navigation.
but
Yeah.
that is subtracting movement. It is not. I
But
don't think it
they
is.
don't go zzz. You don't hear the scanner going ee.
I haven't paid attention. It's constantly being. It's
Oh,
constantly.
really? It's
But
constant.
I have clarified this specifically with Eamon. It's not gated right now. It has the capability of gating, but it is
Oh,
not
yeah, it
gated.
should be gated. Yeah.
Yeah. So if B star is also not gated, that's a big problem. I think they need to gate it.
I mean, when you look at the patients who breathe regularly, it looks amazing because you wind up with way more data, right? For the amount of time that they're sitting there.
Yeah.
It's a huge amount of data. Because if you're just skating, you only have not even 1/3 of the time that you're like trying to image. It's like, just this fraction where they're at that one level with the
Peak
diaphragm.
inspiration or expiration.
And I think it's
But-
usually in
But only if you gate it. I thought you will get the ventilation maps, wouldn't you? Only if you gate it. There is one thing about phase differences for sure.
well, I mean, I
But
guess
that's pre-fold.
well, pre-fold, I mean, it's looking at the changes over the respiratory cycle. I don't still understand exactly how it's doing that. If it decides what's inspiration versus exhalation, I don't know. I'm actually not sure. Or if it's just looking at a waveform and then it takes everything at, the peak and
Correct.
valley.
Correct.
Because we don't know exactly how it's done, it is hard to decipher it.
We'll get there.
So John, I don't know if you know, but Prabhu and I are trying to do one of these CTSI grants for using the low field in the lung MRI patients.
How can I help?
Well, I think we're going to stick with our normal patient population, but I also want to make sure that we're getting you everything you need for the submission, which though it sounds like there's a lot of flexibility with that. I guess the question is always, will a paper help?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I
And
think
all of us to be on it. We need to just put each other on each other's for all of the work that's coming out of this right now. I think we need to make sure that we're just putting each other in. But for the lung stuff, Roberta, you choose where you're at. So.
well, I think the best chance, because it's not going to help. Oh, well, Prabhu wants to put an RO1 in for March, right? No,
We
no to November. So I thought that meant you had to go in with the next one.
No. What I'm saying is, without any pilot data, I think it will be very hard to convince. Is what I'm saying. It's what I'm hearing.
We got tons of time. Then we do have tons of time. For John, though, I think we have enough data to potentially do a paper.
Yes. I need to get those cardiac parts read.
And I guess that's the question. We had initially said, oh, we just need 10 patients. Right now, we don't have 10 patients.
No, but we can get them in. I just need to talk to Sylvie. So we were traveling, remember, for a while because she went to Germany too.
Well, and we also wanted to make sure that we were doing everything right.
Yes. And I think for now, don't you think that what we have right now is right?
Well, I do wonder, should we add the O2 back in?
I think we should. It's gonna increase the time and the cost then, but I think we can get away with doing that. So Mary sent me the first invoice for those, for the patients that needed to get billed, and I think it's fine. So if it's, we're waiting for that to get paid from my grant. So I think that we should theoretically, because what happened was we went over time because that kid was not
Oh, the
doing
Wiggly
super
one?
well. Yeah, we went over time. So Mary charged me extra for Jennifer's time, which is fine. But I think that since we're doing that, maybe we should just say, you know what, let's just get the O2 back on there, but make sure we get cooperative patients so we're not wasting funding on dealing with a kid who's not happy.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then I guess the question is, you know how you were talking about, I mean, I guess the question to me is, we wanted to still focus on patients who've had cardiac MRIs, so we'd have something to compare to. But at the same time, do we have enough patients that we can be picky? And do we want to find patients that have, right, left differences, or just scan whoever we want to get to an N of 10, or?
We can be a little more picky because my timeline is now not until February. So we can be a little more picky.
Because if you already know,
if it's going to help the group, maybe we should look for ones that we know are going to have right-left differences.
it would be more interesting.
Yes. Now, the nice thing is most of the quote unquote standard extracardiac Fontans are going to have right-left differences. So it's pretty
extra cardiac Fontans, aren't
that's the standard tube when they do the tube from the IVC up along the heart.
Is there like a non-extra? Is there a non-extra cardiac Fontan?
Oh yeah, when we've got like Kawashima Glens and stuff like that. If you really wanted to get into some pretty crazy like right-left differences, we could try to get a Fontan who's a Kawashima Glen. So what a Kawashima Glen is be ready to have your eyes go crossed. And probably just remember, this is all data you can use as well. Like if you want to use this in a grant, like this is totally open territory for anybody to be putting these things into their grants. Like that's the goal here. But so Roberta, let's go make your brain go crazy for a second.
Wait, can I mention one other thing before I forget?
Yeah.
Then the other group would be hypoxemic patients versus non.
Yeah.
That might also be more, like, from a physiology standpoint, could be more interesting.
So that would be fenestrated Fontans. So those are patients who have desaturations as Fontans to their systemic vascular system. So that might be interesting. So Kawashima Glens, briefly, it's heterotaxy patients with interrupted IVCs because they have an azygous continuation up to they usually have bilateral SVCs, and the IVC discontinues and goes up the azygous, up a spine on either the right or the left. And then where it attaches is when you have bilateral SVCs, it either goes to the left-sided SVC or the right-sided SVC, depending on which side it goes up.
You can't do both. I guess you couldn't.
Well, no, this is nature. This isn't what we don't do this. This is nature did this. Nature did this. So what happens is when they go for their Glen, we usually do those patients. We do their Glens a little later than usual, because if you think about it, what that means is that the majority of their lower body blood flow is actually going to be in the Glen as well, because the only blood flow that comes into the underside of the heart is the liver blood flow. Yeah, because it's just the hepatics. So when they get their Fontan completion at age 3-ish, their Fontan, it's still going to be an extracardiac Fontan, but it's only the hepatic venous drainage. So, sorry, go ahead.
Do you think that there's any way we could actually scan a patient around the time that they're going to get their Fontan, so we can do before and after? Do you think that would help at all to try to see the blood changing?
Would it help? Well,
like
we need to know what we're looking at first, obviously. I do think it would help, and I think it would help us understand what we're looking at better too.
Mhm.
They're only going to be about 3 years of age, and we can't sedate them there, so we'd have to do feed and bundle,
Mhm.
or some sort of like have them lay down with their mom. So
Mhm.
some people have done this where they lay the child with their mom in the scanner.
I've
And
been wanting to do that too. I would think it'd be kind of.
yeah, and both of them get scanned essentially, essentially. So we could think about that.
I mean,
in-
it could help us because the other question that would be interesting to answer is this idea of the reduced vital capacity. Like, what is actually leading to that? I don't think we have enough patients or even scan time right now to be able to answer that with a small amount of patients, but we might be able to do it if we could scan someone right around getting a Fontan.
I don't know if I understand what you're saying completely, but
Well, the thing that's easy, and we don't need low field for this, is to just do MRI to get lung volumes, because you're too young to do lung function testing. But if we want to see, like, that big thought is that because these patients have had more thoracotomies, they have a reduced vital capacity, at least for some of these patients. We could test whether pre and post their Fontan that you can actually see a reduction in their vital capacity.
you would do the vital capacity using MRI, not, is it just looking at lung volumes? Because if
Looking at
it's
lung
just,
volumes.
huh?
Just looking at lung volumes.
Well, we might have patients who've been scanned pre and post Fontan.
You think you get the lungs too?
Yeah, well, we do an axial cine in everybody, and I think it for the most part goes up to the top of the lung. We can look, and we have and then we have those surveys. We can go back and look. Let me think about that.
Oh, that would be great because I've tried to look at some of the MRIs and I could only see like the cardiac. And maybe I wasn't looking at the right thing. But if you have a 3D, you know, like image, that's all we need because we can use that. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of like what type of consent slash IRB we could have. Kind of like that's why I like Vidya's one because she already has an IRB to look at those fetal scans. I think
Yeah.
we tried to think about an IRB that could look at the cardiac scans.
Yeah, I think that's such low hanging fruit, Roberta. I'm going to keep
That
saying
would be really.
you just need to go into Vidya's data set and figure out how to get those lung volumes out because I'm sure they have them.
And that's old enough that if you do have, and do patients get a cardiac MRI? Because for some reason I thought they only got the cardiac MRI when they were much later, but they're getting them also before they get their Fontans.
Some of them, yeah, there are patients. We scan plenty of Glens.
Do you scan like earlier than that?
Yeah, so we have a stem cell study that's ongoing that we've been scanning them before they get their Glen.
Oh,
So we can get those patients and we can take a look and see what we have. And they're getting it's a very well prescribed data set. And if you want, I can always write an IRB to look at that data.
that would
Can
be.
can you open one of those scans to show the lungs? Like if you are
Hold on.
connected.
Yeah, let me
This is an activity preliminary to research.
it is an activity research. And I'm on the IRB for the ELPIS study anyway, so it's okay. I can look at it all I want.
If their name's going to be on it, I can pause the recording.
Well, hold on.
I mean, this is the kind of nice stuff that if there is already data sets available,
You can write it up.
yeah, just to bump out something.
Yeah.
I mean, because this would be great data for the additional adventures thing.
Yeah.
Because if the idea is to better understand pulmonary development in these single ventricle patients, that would be really nice. I mean, that's not due till, the letter of intent, I think, is in February. So if there's any way we have very motivated undergrad / other people who might be able to like help with some of this stuff, because it still does take time. Oh, Prabhu, trying to figure out how to get your preliminary data though. I mean, the
Yeah,
question is,
I
do
mean,
you have
if that DISC grant comes through, and they haven't heard back from them. I think I CC'd you in that email, right? Yeah. So if it comes through, I mean, I can send some of my babies who are going home. I can consent them, and even 4-5
Hmm,
would be fine. And the last date for my early investigator is June 30, and the last day for RO1 or R21 is June 5. So we can stretch it till then if you want to get 5 or 10 prelim patients.
I think the question is always, do you have to have a paper to be like to
That
really
I don't-
bump up your success,
That
right?
too. That too.
I think you do. I
You think so?
Yeah.
What is the paper demonstrating? Is the paper demonstrating that we can work together, or is the paper demonstrating that we have prelim
Feasibility.
data?
Yeah, it's feasibility. Can you do it? Can you even do
That's-
what you're saying? One of the big knocks on my pre-full part of my initial RO1 was they're like, whoever it was either looked it up or knows something about pre-full. They're like, can you even do that in Fontan patients? Like, is that even possible? Like that was their question. They're like, you have 0 preliminary data and you're talking about a new technique. Like you can't do that. You've got to show us something.
Which, if we show it in a non-BPD patient population, I think that's, I mean, even like that asthma, like those are well-controlled asthma patients, much less
Correct.
like some of the crazy asthma patients we have
Correct.
that
Correct.
come into clinic.
I think I can take some of the asthmas, 2 or 3 BPDs, older and a couple younger. I think that should be enough.
Yeah. John, do you think, have you scanned people with ports? How bad do you think that would be? How friendly are those ports?
That's a good question. I'm sure we've scanned some sickle cell patients with ports in place, but I don't know them off the top of my head.
That's a good point too, because sickle cell is a whole nother ventilation perfusion group.
Oh yeah. Oh man.
Dynamic.
Don't even get me started on that. Like that's
And we have a much better, like at least track record for sickle cell publications, even if it's not necessarily in,
No, Roberta, so the between you and I, the paper would be for feasibility and showing that we can do this. You and I have such a long track record, Roberta, nobody's going to bat an eye about that. As a matter of fact, they're going to always say that's a strength in any of our grants. Trust me. For you and me, dude, we were on so many of each other's papers over the years, it's not even funny. It's Prabhu, it's Amen, it's Stanford. We need to get on papers with each other. So probably that's definitely between you and I, that's something that you and I need to do if we're going to publish together and work on grants together and all that stuff. Even if it's just, putting me on as a co-investigator in your grants or me putting you on, that type of thing. We need to show that we've worked together before.
and I think maybe that's the thing is like, do we just need to do, any pre-full paper? It doesn't necessarily need to be PPD for Prabhu to kind of benefit from.
Yeah, but we need to put each other, even if it's just as a middle author, need to throw each other in each other's papers for a while. So, yeah.
So that's why I think it'd be a win-win to try to bump something out right now. But then, I mean, the asthma actually did look interesting.
Yeah, whatever you think, Roberta, this space better than anybody. So I will.
It all looks interesting to me. Like I think the sickle cell could be its own RO1 type of thing.
Oh
much,
yeah.
Much less and that's why probably I think the biggest question is, is the RO1 best as just BPD? I mean, there's enough patients that I think it could fly on its own.
Yeah, I mean, the option is R21, which is not as demanding, and then use that time to have more publications together and obviously data, and then do RO1. But the RO1 of a global, like chronic lung disease RO1, I think is also exciting.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people say that R21 isn't really being funded very often at this point, even though I brought it up, but that
is it?
It's not as lucrative.
Easy.
feasible-
Yeah. It's not as what?
lucrative at this point,
Oh, you mean in terms of the amount?
or just getting any success. Let me look up success rate. I mean, it's 10%. I don't know how old this data is. It's as of last year, though. That's not too bad for R21. New investigators, 10% success rate. It's probably worth it. 1 out of 10.
Yes.
I always say you gotta apply for 10 grants a year to make sure you get at least one. So
Correct.
that's,
So that's 1 out of 10 right there.
yeah, that sounds pretty good. But if there's existing data from the cardiac MRIs for lung volumes, that could
So
by itself be a paper about MRI and lungs.
the reason I want to see one of these MRIs is normally the lung regions are like completely black.
Which is
Instead,
nice for lung volumes.
no, there is no differentiation at all. And the lungs may be collapsed or not. Hilum, everything is like sort of, hilum may not be as much, but most other is black. So the most you can get out of it is what some people call intrapleural volume, meaning anything within the chest, we'll consider that as lung. So then it's important that you apply your dimensions correctly or regions correctly. So to make sure you've captured everything and you're not taking excess amount or things like that. And that you have control over the number of slices that have been done, unless you are doing it sagittal or coronal,
It
right?
has to be 3D.
Yeah, or coronal.
Well, at least for lung volumes, it'd have to be 3D. And if we, I think part of it would be validating some of our measures based on pulmonary function testing that's done in older patients. And then you just extrapolate down to the younger patients.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good idea.
We don't have full lung volumes, but we could actually look at,
That's
reduce.
not a bad idea.
Mister, I come up with at least fairly good ideas.
No, it is
They're mixed in with some bad ideas, but
no, it is validated in BPD to some extent, but there are methodological flaws that I think, my personal opinion, that don't allow it to be very closely correlated with outcomes. For example, we have a flawed categorization of BPD as mild, moderate, severe. So this intrapleural volume, which is not 3D, by the way, it is simply, based on the size of the chest, they divide it into a certain number of slices. And they're just counting the volumes in that slices. That's all. It's not 3D. It's not even a survey. It's entirely actual slices. Okay. With that, they are calculating volume. And that is not able to distinguish between mild and moderate, but it is like night and day for mild, moderate versus severe. So I think to that extent, for sure, big problems it can identify. But if you are able to correlate it with pulmonary function testing, pleth or spirometry and vital capacity, then that will be a step up of that.
the other thing I was going to mention was that flow volume loop thing could be applied to the asthma patients. That's the only reason I think it would be interesting, but I haven't looked at it in the data set that Stanford.
Yeah. If that's PowerPoint is on the
Yeah, it's on the
database, right? Yeah, I'll have a look.
John, do you have the link to the SharePoint?
Yeah, I have the link to the SharePoint.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah. For what, you know what, I keep forgetting Circle's acting up and we have to get our computers upgraded. But let me I'm trying to pull up this patient who had the ELPIS study because he's got 3 cardiac MRIs, and he's not even 2. Because he's getting them for that study. But I'm a little bit worried now because I looked at one of the axial cines. We don't always go to the top of the lung. So
And yeah, some of them I didn't even see all the way out to the periphery.
yeah. So
But you're right, maybe there's a localizer or something that might give us, it doesn't have to be pretty, because the lungs are so like black usually on
yeah.
the eyes that if we're just looking at lung volume, even if we want to just call it intrathoracic volume,
Yeah,
AP diameter. Because that's one of my questions, is there scarring that's leading to like restricted, like, just expansion, or is it like actual, some people think of like a mechanical problem after you've had a thoracotomy?
Yeah. Well, that's what the paper with Imran and Katie showed, right? That was the right?
Well, we only showed the difference between, like, we could show the difference in vital capacity, but not the mechanism. And so I think that this is what can lead to understanding a mechanism.
Yeah.
'Cause I think of, it's with anything. You understand the mechanism, you can figure out where to plug in an intervention.
Yep. Yep.
Because we can't predict who's going to have a reduced vital capacity other than knowing how many thoracotomies. Even that, though, it's just a reduced an increased risk for a reduced vital capacity, but not everyone has that.
So the interesting thing where you can test that, and it would be an intervention without them knowing it was an intervention, or the patients who are getting the pulmonary valve replacements in the cath lab for tetralogy of Fallot.
I was going to say, because the other patient population who had like a high risk was tetralogy of Fallot, and then the other one was, what was the other one? It was like a second
Transposition, I think, right?
It was something. No, it was. Probably should know because I think I'm definitely an author on one of those.
Yeah. You're an author on both of them, I think.
Oh, I think I'm senior author on the one with the spirometry.
Yeah, seriously, Roberta. Let's see. Hold on.
Let me go and look at that paper.
Ooh.
What?
Oh.
See, we can't see anything that you're doing.
I'm sorry. Hold on. I just totally forgot.